All right, so we're back here in WrestleRant. I'm Graham Giuseppe Matthews, and today we're breaking down the 1993 installment of WWE Survivor Series as seen on the WWE Network. As, of course, for the entire month of November, we're breaking down every installment in Survivor Series history that I did not review last year. And for those that are unaware, I talked about Survivor Series 1990, 96, 97, 98, 2001, 02, 03, 05, 08, 2011, and 2012 last year. So be sure to check out those installments of the series on WrestleRant on the channel from last November. But anyway, getting back to this year's Survivor Series 1993. Opening the show, a 4-on-4 traditional elimination tag team match pitting Razor Ramon, Marty Jannetty, the 1-2-3 Kid, and Randy Savage against IRS, Rick Martel, Adam Bomb, and Diesel. A surprisingly very fun match. It felt like a wild card match of sorts with a lot of different components. You had not losers, but lower tier guys like Marty Jannetty and 1-2-3 Kid. Now I realize that at this point Marty Jannetty was still not a big deal, but he was still somewhat relevant, involved in the IC title picture, and still at least doing fine for himself on his own. The 1-2-3 Kid had just debuted that year, but then you had guys like Diesel. I mean, I know he had just debuted, but a future WWE champion involved in the opener. Razor Ramon, two-thirds of the original NWO in one match. Randy Savage, a former WWE champion. And other new guys involving, Adam Bomb, like I said, Diesel, 1-2-3 Kid. So a lot of fresh faces and a nice little combination of the established guys, the up-and-coming guys, and the new guys. And it made for a very fun matchup with, of all the guys in the matchup to have survived, you have Marty Jannetty and 1-2-3 Kid. Now, I'm not criticizing that. I was just very surprised by it, and I thought it was cool. Put over, Marty Jannetty didn't really need to be put over. He was right where he was supposed to be in the mid-card. But the 1-2-3 Kid, I just got done criticizing. I think it was 95, not 93, but not just got done, but I talked about it in my SummerSlam 95 review when he got beat by, Hakushi in, 5 minutes for no reason. But for a majority of 1993, 1-2-3 Kid was a loser. And that was kind of the intent. I know he was the ultimate underdog. I realized that. But it was cool to see him finally get his just due alongside Marty Jannetty in a very fun mixed bag of a match to kick off the show. So after that, we had our second traditional Survivor Series elimination tag team match tonight, another 4-on-4 match, pitting the Hart family involving Keith Hart, Owen Hart, Bruce Hart, and of course Bret Hart against Jerry Lawler's crew of Shawn Michaels and his Knights, one being black, one being red, and the other being blue. So it was very strange after they had spent pretty much the entirety of 1993 building this feud between Jerry Lawler and Bret Hart, and Lawler wasn't even in the match. It was Shawn Michaels, which I'm not complaining. I think Shawn Michaels definitely obviously held up his own for his own team. I have no idea who the Knights were, who they were played by. But it felt like such a waste. The match went on for 30 minutes, and no one gave two shits about the Harts. Owen Hart was already introduced by this point, and they were building a story between him and Bret Hart. They teased the tension between those two leading into their WrestleMania match and the heel turn from Owen, which made perfect sense. So I had no issue with Owen Hart being involved, of course. But Bruce Hart, Keith Hart, gave no shits, gave zero shits about those guys in this match. Same thing with the Knights, and because we had no idea who they were, why they were helping Shawn Michaels, what they had anything to do with this storyline, I couldn't connect with them. I couldn't care less when they were eliminated by the Hart family. So in the end, it was I think it was Bret Hart and Keith Hart, I want to say. Let me just double check there. Yeah, it was Bruce Hart, Bret Hart, and Keith Hart. So everyone but Owen pretty much surviving, which, like I said, which makes no sense on paper considering Owen was the more established of all the Hart brothers, family members, whatever, other than Bret, of course. They were building the tension between him and Bret going into WrestleMania, so it was successful in that respect. But the match itself was just awful, and the fact it went on for 30 minutes was a complete and total waste. So right after that, for the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team titles, we had the Heavenly Bodies taking on the Rock and Roll Express, who were the defending SMW Tag Team Champions. A very good match from an in-ring standpoint. The WWF crowd didn't care too much because this was a feud that was based outside of WWF at that time, so it was a lot better than the match that we got between the two teams. I don't think it was the Heavenly Bodies. I think it was Midnight Express. I reviewed it either at an Unforgiven show, a No Mercy show, in the late 90s, but it was awful. The crowd couldn't have given two shits about it. But at least the crowd cared more about this one than they did the rematch a couple years later. I just don't know how wise it is to do a match in WWF that really doesn't contain any WWF guys. Tom Pritchard would stick around. He would be with the company for a while longer. Jimmy Del Rey, not so much. But just to do a match, like to say, maybe ECW or WCW would be a different story, but a promotion that people just don't really know. It's like if we were to have a episode of Raw nowadays. And I'm all for like giving WWE, giving more exposure to lesser known promotions, but even like the NXT matches, I think are a little bit different. I feel like they're more well known. But like for a Northeast Wrestling match, if we had Matt Taven, who is in Ring of Honor, I realize, but he's also a Northeast Wrestling guy, versus Brian Anthony, who I'm sure a lot of you don't know. If we had that match on Raw, a lot of people wouldn't have given two shits. And I know Raw is a lot different now than Survivor Series was in 1993. But still, I feel like the WWF crowd couldn't really connect too much because they weren't guys they weren't really all that familiar with, if that makes sense. But I thought from an in-ring standpoint, like I said, it was very, very good. And I enjoyed the match in that respect. And it was the Heavenly Bodies who took home the SMW Tag Team titles. So after that, our next Survivor Series Elimination traditional 4-on-4 tag team match. It was the Four Doinks, who were basically the Bushwhackers and Men on a Mission in disguise in Doink makeup, taking on Bam Bam Bigelow, the Headshrinkers, and Bastion Booger. Total waste of a match. Like I would understand if we just had the Hart family versus Michaels and the Knights match, which I understand was not a comedy match. It was not intended to be one. But it basically was. Let's admit it. That was a garbage match. And this was another comedy match on the show. When you only have 5 matches, you got to utilize that time to the maximum. And to do 2 really throwaway matches that people didn't give a shit about was kind of a waste. The Four Doinks, the Bushwhackers, and Men on a Mission completely wiped out all the heels. And the storyline going into the pay-per-view is that Doink was feuding with Bam Bam and Luna. But Doink the Clown was not even involved in the match. He wasn't even at a ringside. He showed up afterwards on like the Titantron or at the top of the stage or whatever it was to taunt Bam Bam. But that was it. That was it for Doink. He wasn't even involved in the match, which might have been for the better. But it didn't really further a feud. It was just kind of a waste of a match. The crowd, it was, for shits and giggles. They were all in the Doink makeup, like I said. So I can kind of see why. But after that whole waste of a match earlier on between the Hart family and Michaels and the Knights was, this match was really all that not necessary at all. But one thing I did note, though, I'm sure this comparison has been made before. I'm positive it's been made before. But one realization that I came to while watching this match was that Men on a Mission were basically the New Day circa 1993. The whole interacting with the crowd and the clapping and whatever, and basically 3 black dudes, not to sound racist, but New Day were Men on a Mission when they first came in as baby faces. But back then it was a lot easier for the crowd to care about you because they hadn't been done a million times over, And what I found most funny about that was the fact how the crowd was chanting "Whoop, there it is" when Mabel was in the ring. Yet 20 years later, not a few months, a few years, 2 decades later, R-Truth is still doing that, a part of his act. It's atrocious, and it really goes to show how out of touch Vince McMahon is with his culture, with his company, and the culture, the pop culture of 2015. But just a total waste of a match. But we get to the main event. The All-Americans, consisting of the Steiner brothers, The Undertaker, and Lex Luger, taking on the Foreign Fanatics, Yokozuna, Crush, Ludwig Borga, and Quebecer Huaques, or however you pronounce it. Not like it matters anyway, people. But the match itself was solid. I can't really say it was great. I think I cared about... I guess it had really more of a main event feel to it than a lot of the other main event Survivor Series tag team matches did, and that I've criticized in past years, in 89, in last year, in 92. Didn't really feel like those were main event caliber matches. This one did. You had a lot of different components, a lot of things from the past, a lot of things going into the future. With Luger, his on and off feud with Yokozuna going into WrestleMania, and he was finally able to get one over on him. But the real feud going on at that time was between Undertaker and Yokozuna, kicking off that feud going into the Royal Rumble, where they would have their casket match. And then, I think the Steiner brothers brought that wrestling element into the match. Otherwise, it wasn't really like a wrestling masterpiece. It wasn't a technical masterpiece. Crush had his feud furthered with Randy Savage, who was involved in the opener, like I said before. And Savage was beating up on Crush, yet that did not lead to a DQ. So I thought that was strange. But anyway, so we had that feud furthered. The Quebecer, don't even remember what involvement he had in this match, to be quite honest with you. But the other feud going on at that time was between Luger and Ludwig Borga, which was foreshadowed at SummerSlam when Luger won the match via countout in his WWE title match against Yokozuna. And Ludwig Borga, who was anti-USA, was saying in backstage promos that he was going after Luger. planting the siege for their confrontation on this show. And in the end, Lex Luger was the sole survivor in taking out Ludwig Borga in the end, and Yokozuna and Undertaker. I think they both got counted out or DQ'd and to kick off that feud, like I said, for Royal Rumble. But Ludwig Borga, it's funny, in the 2010s, we've had Rusev. In the 2000s, we had Vladimir Kozlov. And in the 1990s, we had Ludwig Borga. Basically, the one-dimensional foreign heel. I mean, Rusev was a lot better of an act, I feel, for the time that it lasted before he went down the tubes following his loss to John Cena at WrestleMania. But Vladimir Kozlov was basically Ludwig Borga in 2008 during his rise to prominence. Ludwig Borga was not an awful worker, but the gimmick was so one-dimensional that people didn't give a shit. Lex Luger beat him 1-2-3 decisively and clean in this main event, and that was it. Lex Luger was the sole survivor. And then afterwards, we had Santa Claus come out and celebrate the holidays with Santa and Lex Luger, which was, they went off the air the same way in 1992, too. I just thought it was funny. But that was it. Lex Luger is the conquering hero. And like I said, it was more of a main event feel than the other main events of Survivor Series in years past, maybe with the exception of Michaels and Hart in 92. I was thinking when I was talking about the match that didn't feel like a main event, I think I was talking about 91 with Legion of Doom against whoever, when they were the sole survivors that year. But yeah, I guess it had more of a main event feel to it, this match did, than past main events of other installments of Survivor Series. Yeah, so it was solid, not a great main event, but there was a lot of factors going on, a lot of feuds furthered, a lot of feuds put to rest. So it did make sense from that perspective. But on the whole, I thought it was a middle-of-the-road show. Not a great show, but certainly better than 92 and 91 combined. The opener was a lot of fun. If there's any one match in the show I would recommend you go out of your way to watch, it's the opener. It's a mixed bag of competitors, but it's just a lot of fun. The match after that, the Hart family versus Michaels and the Knights, a total waste, as well as the Four Doinks versus Bigelow, Booger, and the Shrinkers, the Headshrinkers. Again, a total waste of time. Unless you get a kick out of that kind of shit, it's really kind of a waste. Heavenly Bodies versus Rock and Roll Express, probably the best wrestling match in the entire show. The crowd reaction wasn't really there, but I thought it was a great wrestling match. If you want to check out that match, be sure to do so. And the main event was good. I mean, you had the feel-good ending with Luger going over and celebrating with Santa Claus, of all people, going into the holidays in the month that followed. But and on the whole, I thought it was a middle-of-the-road show. Not a must-see pay-per-view, but there are some points of the show that I would recommend that you watch, specifically the tag team title match and, more importantly, the opener with Ramon, Savage, Jannetty, 1-2-3 Kid, IRS, Diesel, Martel, and Adam Bomb. So that is my review of Survivor Series 1993. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Always appreciate it. But be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All support is greatly appreciated. I'll be back tomorrow with my review of Survivor Series 1994. And I know I don't usually, traditionally I do not put up WrestleRant videos other than Saturdays, Sundays, and Tuesdays. But because I'm so far behind and my computer was broken, thank you for bearing with me, by the way. I got to catch up by posting these WrestleRant editions during the course of the week, which will probably be the case for this week, as well as maybe next week too. So anyway, like I said, SummerSlam, I did it again. Survivor Series 94 review, people, up tomorrow right here on the channel. Be sure to subscribe. You will be notified as soon as it's up. But in the meantime, and in between time, folks, have a great rest of your Wednesday. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch you folks down the road.